with us today and want to thank you for making the time for this. And as usual, I just want to start off with a couple of technical assistance instructions. So Francis, if you could just go to the first screen. As you know, your audio is enabled, but we're asking you to please mute yourself and turn on your mic when you are speaking. And this is for the commissioners. And then for all participants, you are muted on entry and your audio will be enabled when the moderator enables you during the public comment period. And we'll call on the participants for public comment in the order that they've registered for the meeting. If you sent in your name before the meeting, you'll be called on first. And then if you're dialing in via phone or if you're on the video call, you can also submit your name for public comment. And during the call, you can do it during the meeting. On the video call, you can do it in the chat. On the phone, you have a number that you can send a text to, which is 646-763-2189 to offer public comment. And we will call on the dial-in participants by name in order that the text was received. Now, Francis, I have a question for you because I think someone is on the phone. Is it Amy's on the phone today? How does that work for Amy?
Yeah, Amy's on the phone. She can unmute herself.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So
yeah, I'm here, Sarah. Sorry, I had to drive and got caught a little late, so I apologize.
Oh, no worries. Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that you didn't have to do the texting thing to be able to speak. So sounds like that we're all good there. And then the option to, if you need closed captioning, under more options on WebEx, under the more options icon, you can enable, which you get to by seeing the ... on your screen next to the smiley face icon. You can click on that and you will be able to enable the closed captioning. So thank you for those brief tips. And then let's go to what is next? Okay, so we are going to start off today by doing what we usually do, which is attendance and moving through the agenda. And I want to make sure before we start that all the commissioners received the agenda and other materials for today's meeting. Is there anyone who did not receive it for some reason? Should have gotten it in an email. Okay, so I'm going to assume that everyone has it. And speaking of email, I just wanted to, well, actually, maybe I'll come back to that a little bit later on emails. All right, let's go through the attendance. I'm going to just call on you, call your name, and just say if you're here. And before I do that, I want to just thank Linda Leake. I will not be calling her name today because she has resigned from the commission, and I believe I emailed you all that information. So please just stay here when I call your name. Chuck Apelian.
I'm here, and my apologies. I have a 2:30 hard stop.
Okay. Murad Awaude. Okay. Eve Barron.
Here.
Holly Bonner. Amy, I heard before. Amy Breedlove. Mark Diller.
I'm here.
Lori Fiorotto. Donna Gill. I heard Donna before. And Anthony Harmon. I see you.
Here.
Yeah, thank you. Jose Hernandez. Jose here. Lillian Perez.
I'm here.
Okay, and Anastasia?
I'm here.
Okay.
Here, can you hear me now?
Is that Jose?
Jose?
Oh, yeah. Oh, perfect. Yeah, thank you, Jose.
All right.
Okay, awesome. So let's go through the approval of the minutes. So
Hey,
we,
Sarah, I'm here as well. Sorry.
oh, awesome. Yay. Okay. So hopefully, I don't know if Holly and Lori are here and I couldn't see them for some reason or hear them, but I don't see them on the participant list. Okay, so the next, someone saying something?
I was going to move to approve the minutes as presented.
Oh, thank you. Awesome. Thank you for that, for moving. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Say nay. Okay, so everyone's in favor of approving the minutes. So the minutes for September 30th meeting are now approved. So for the program updates, seems like a bad echo here on the computer. Can everyone hear me okay?
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, we have on the first item on the agenda is to update you on how our services went during the general election. So to do that, we have Guggen, who's going to present a quick update for us, or summary for us, sorry. I will go on mute.
Good afternoon, folks. Thank you so much, Dr. Saeed. As you all know, the CEC implemented the Pool Site Language Assistance Program for the first time for the November 2020 general election as mandated by the city charter to expand interpretation services in 11 languages at select poll sites. And through this first implementation, there have been many challenges and through which many lessons learned how to improve the processes, timelines, training materials, and think through alternative approaches for certain work streams to further streamline the work prior to administering the program again for the June primary. And as you folks are familiar, the CEC served more languages than in the past that were served by the Mayor's Office of Immigrant Affairs pilot program, specifically 9 local law 30 languages and 2 additional languages through our formula that's included in the city charter. So the languages, as you know, we served are Arabic, Bengali, Chinese, which includes Cantonese, Mandarin, French, Haitian Creole, Italian, Korean, Polish, Russian, Urdu, and Yiddish. And services were provided in 2 languages per early voting site, with the exception of 3 sites that served 3 languages. On election day, 1 language was served by poll site, with the exception of 1 poll site that served 2 languages. And the reasoning for that is that there are certain languages that have the highest concentration of speakers at the same site as at the same site where there are already 2 languages being served. So instead of going to the next ranking site, we serve 3 languages instead of serving 2. And as folks are familiar, we provided services in the last 2 days of early voting at 25 sites and at 52 sites on election day. The program provided services at 102 poll sites across the 3 days and 77 unique sites. As I shared with you all, being the first time that we're implementing this program, there were definitely some challenges that we were navigating, one of which was recruitment of interpreters. We experienced some difficulties due to addition of new languages. The vendor that we work with, they were expanding the language portfolio by several languages. So having to build that base, there was definitely some issues with recruitment and drop off. But in addition, the layer of the challenges due to COVID-19 was also a very real thing. And we had the most difficulty recruiting for Urdu, Yiddish, and Haitian Creole. And we were able to meet the targets that we set for recruitment, but it was down to the wire. And members of our Language Assistance Advisory Committee really stepped in to help get the information out there and help us recruit additional interpreters for those languages. In terms of operations, the CEC worked with several vendors, predominantly MWBEs, to coordinate recruitment, screening of interpreters and supervisors, transportation of interpreters and supervisors, like going to different poll sites throughout the day, delivery of materials. This is all of the materials that interpreters and supervisors may need at their poll site throughout the day. Includes PPE, delivery of furniture at non-Department of Education sites, material needs like creating our tablecloths, all of those material pieces that we use during the operation days, and also creative collateral creation and media ad buys. So it was a very wide effort in terms of operations to implement this program. And yes, so the other piece in terms of operations, navigating and managing this number of vendors was something that it wasn't necessarily challenging, but it's something that we had to be very organized around. And in our debrief, we've been working with Do It, who is our home agency, to better streamline those vendors, and also to identify maybe there's alternative ways to work with the city or other vendors that may be out there. So that's one piece that we were working through. We worked very closely with the New York City Board of Elections Central Team to troubleshoot challenges that came up during early voting and election day. Some of those challenges were, we had some interpreters placed outside of certain poll sites. And for early voting, the first day, October 31st, during which we provided services, we had 3 outdoor poll sites. On November 1st, we again had 3 poll sites outdoors. And if you all remember, October 31st was a very cold day. So that was a huge challenge for us, because we're trying to balance both the experience of the interpreters and making sure that their well-being and safety is kept into consideration, while at the same time providing services in the ranked sites that we have outlined through the methodology. So that was definitely something that was navigating. And the reasoning for CEC being placed outside is these were poll sites that were like one-room polling sites. So as soon as you walked into the building, that was it. So there wasn't necessarily a separate space where the interpreters could be placed. And other challenges that came up was, like a challenge that's come up before in the pilot program, which is, certain poll site staff being unfamiliar with the oath form or affidavit form. And that's something that we flagged to the Board of Election Central Team, and they would either send materials or help resolve in real time. Other issues were around the communication on the ground between poll site staff and CEC interpreters. But that's something that we've discussed and debriefed with the Board of Election Central Team on ways that we can improve that, which includes attending a training the Board of Election holds for their staff and speaking to the program there. So we've already begun to think about collaborative solutions to prevent these type of on-the-ground communication issues from happening in the June primary. Of course, there's always going to be something, but we're trying to mitigate the issues that we saw in the last cycle. And just to quickly go back to the issue around interpreters being placed outside, due to weather on October 31st, we had one poll site where we changed the operation hours. We had to close down the poll site by 1 p.m. as opposed to 4 p.m. Just due to how cold it was outside and making sure that our interpreters were good. So that was an issue that we were trying to resolve in real time. We sent warm materials to our interpreters. We had flagged to them ahead of time that you will be placed outside, but it was again unreasonably cold. So that was a collective decision the team had to make around closing that site earlier as opposed to like staying open throughout the day. And we really, it's important for us to also prioritize the health and safety of interpreters, but also the morale of interpreters, because these are the same folks that we want to work with through the cycles. We want to continuously build a deep pool of interpreters who we can work with, who are familiar with the program, and thus know how to navigate the types of issues that come up. Even though we go through them in the training, it's great to have that historical knowledge. And other challenges that we navigated were just around materials. We coordinated the delivery and pickup of all materials, but there were some sites where, and specifically more so with the private sites or pool sites that were operated, that were within a commercial building. Those were the ones where we really had these issues, like not finding some of our materials or them being misplaced by building support staff. And to mitigate those issues, we had folks who were runners and would troubleshoot or run materials or any missing documents, PPE, whatever the interpreters needed to the pool sites. In terms of the division of issues, early voting was, I think, it had much more issues than we did on election day. And that's perhaps just because the first day of early voting was the first day we were implementing the program. Everything was very new, as opposed to by election day. I think our interpreters, our supervisors, the CEC Central team knew how to mitigate the issues much quicker. And thus election day was very, very smooth, especially compared to the first early voting day. In terms of utilization and impact of the program, the most utilized languages over the course of the 3 days were Russian, Polish, Haitian Creole, French, Bengali, Urdu, and Arabic. And as folks know, Bengali, Urdu, and Arabic were served for the first time in this last cycle. The pilot program would serve the prior languages, Russian, Polish, Haitian Creole, and French. But we saw very high utilization of Bengali, Urdu, and Arabic, despite the number of sites being much lower than the sites allocated for Russian or Haitian Creole. And due to historic voter turnout, the CEC also saw a very drastic increase in utilization from the November 2019 pilot program. So the Mayor's Office of Immigrant Affairs, their program, their utilization in the general election in November 2019 and this past cycle, we saw almost double utilization. And of course, we'd like to say it's all of our outreach efforts. And, we did partner with members of our Language Assistance Advisory Committee, with good government groups. In addition, we worked with, sorry, my brain just went blank. So we partnered with also the Census 2020 infrastructure to really disseminate information about our pool site language assistance program, and in addition, voter education materials that we had created with city partners as well. So we'd like to say that it was all of those efforts that led to high utilization, but it's really record high voter turnout, and we saw those numbers reflected in our utilization as well. And we, as folks know, we partnered with Democracy NYC, Campaign Finance Board, and Mayor's Office of Immigrant Affairs on creative collateral on early voting, voting by mail, and voters' rights. So your right to bring an interpreter to the poll site, to increase early voting and absentee voting during COVID-19 pandemic, and just to disseminate and demystify some of these services. And we, as I said, we worked with the Language Assistance Advisory Committee and Census, both on dissemination of these materials, but also in the creation of it. The LAC helped review the scripts as they were being developed and offered further feedback to make sure that the language that we were using was very localized versus like academic or inaccessible, or maybe a dialect that's not necessarily spoken in New York City. And same with this, the Census 2020 team. We worked with the Census team and the LAC to create a PSA on absentee voting and we utilized the stories. And we worked with members of our LAC so they could talk about absentee voting in language in their environment. And we partnered with Brick Media to create that creative collateral. So there was a lot of not necessarily chefs in the kitchen, but there were a lot of partnerships throughout the implementation of the Whole Site Language Assistance Program in this past cycle that really helped to make it a success. It was our open communication channels with the New York City Board of Elections. It was all of the members of our LAC who were part of the material development, the review and dissemination, and just many city partners, including folks from Census who stepped in to help us, especially when it came to site outreach and visiting sites. As folks know, we're a very small team. So having this expanded, professional community to help implement this program helped make it a success and made it as smooth as it was. Yes, but that's pretty much the overview of the implementation of the program in this past election. I just want to open up any space for questions folks might have.
Gagan, this is Donna speaking.
Hi, Donna.
How are you, my love?
I'm good.
How did everything go, and how do you see us doing a better job or a job, and how do you think that everything went? That's the first question. The second question was how the BOE staff, were they very cooperative, or did you find any resistance, or things like that? Those are my questions.
Thank you, Donna. So how did it go? It was a giant operation, and I'm so grateful for Francis, Leslie, Daniel, everyone on the team for playing a role wherever they could to make it happen. And that was also a really beautiful thing to see, our tiny team coming together to run a citywide program. And I think that was part of the success, and because of that, I think it went really well. In terms of doing a better job, I think there's many areas in which we can do a better job. So even starting out with the training materials that we use to train interpreters and supervisors, of course, we were developing these materials, having never implemented the program before. So there was just a lot of, I think Francis and I were both keeping a list of, okay, we need to add this to the training content. We need to add these questions to the FAQ document for supervisors. Just based on the type of questions and issues that were coming up during the operation days. Other pieces that Francis and I have been working on is streamlining our procurement process. Like I said, we work with several vendors, and that's a really, we do have to be very organized with those timelines in order to make sure that everything is executed by the day that we need. And like I said, we've been thinking about how to streamline and make those processes just easier by communicating with the agency that houses us to make sure that they're familiar with the project. We worked with a vendor who helped with the transportation of interpreters and supervisors. Then we worked with a vendor that transported our materials, a vendor who delivered our materials, a vendor that delivered our furniture. So all of those things, we had a debrief conversation with Do It to explain all of those pieces and how they work together. So it's not as confusing when we're implementing at the same scale for the June primary. Other areas of improvement, I think this lends itself to the next piece on the agenda is, the interpreter well-being. The three experiences that we really care about are the voter experience, the interpreter's experience, and then the CEC staff experience, right? We want to make sure that all of those lend themselves to a smooth and focused program. So the piece I think that we were all struggling with was the having interpreters be outside, and and they were so willing and very focused on providing those services, and very those were the values they were operating from. But there were moments when we had to make the call of no, there's crazy winds, it's raining really hard, we really need to close the site. The first day on October 31st, when it was really cold, we had interpreters they were so dedicated and wanted to stay the whole day, and we're like, no, it doesn't make sense for you to get sick, especially with the layer of COVID-19 and the fact that these folks showed up and they were so dedicated to the work. That's one piece that we in our debrief were like, we need to make sure that this experience improves. So the amendments that we'll speak about in a few minutes are also ways that we see that we can make our methodology more clear and just improve the experience for folks serving in the program in whatever capacity that they are.
I think I'm going to move us.
How was DOE staff?
Oh yeah,
The staff
sorry.
with BOE and that coordination. Yeah.
Thank you. Sorry. I forgot that piece. So working with the BOE Central team was very positive. It was, like I said, for example, we had an issue on the first day with a tiff between an interpreter and pool site staff. And we quickly got on a call with Board of Elections, and all of us just, talked about the issue and came to collaborative solutions in real time. And that was the piece that helped make the program so smooth, was our open communication. The Board of Election Central team and the CEC Central team were on an email thread for the course of the 3 days. And like I said, their coordinators, their central team would respond immediately. We would raise an issue, they would respond immediately. We'd flag something, they'd respond immediately. They would flag issues to us, and we would immediately, either send a runner there or one of our folks who were now doing the troubleshooting to resolve those issues. So I would say the experience and collaboration fed into the success of the program.
Thank you.
Thank you, Donna.
How many people used? Sorry, how many people used translation services in this round? And I know that this is we shouldn't use this as a base or anything because of COVID and the huge emphasis on mail-in ballots, as well as early voting and everything else that's happened. But do we have a number of how many people we served?
So yes, we do. And like I said, we saw drastic growth from the past iteration through the pilot and the NCEC's first implementation. And what we can do is create I'm working on a post-election report that includes utilization data broken down by language and overview of the program, and in addition, feedback from interpreters and supervisors that we gathered through surveys that we will be sharing with commissioners. Yeah. But in terms of the actual number, we have the preliminary number, but are holding to release it.
All right, in the interest of time, I'm going to keep us moving along, and if we have time at the end, we can come back to more questions on this piece, but I do want to make sure that we get through some of the other things that we have to cover, and one of them is, of course, the amendments to the methodology. As Gagan pointed out, there was a lot of learning that happened during this implementation. And it became pretty clear to us that we were dealing with scenarios that weren't really covered in the methodology, and that we needed to refine the methodology and I think we knew this, at the beginning as well, when we started talking about how we were going to provide these services, is that it was going to have to be an iterative process. And what we'd like to do today is just take you through some of the amendments to the methodology. But I think our greater intention is really to try to hold a public hearing after this fiscal year to hear, feedback on our operations, as well as consider changes to the methodology with wider public input. In the same way that we had, in the initial hearing for the methodology. So to go to the amendments piece, there are a couple of things we're trying to solve for. Some of them Guggen already raised. One is that, this program is dependent on appropriations, right? And we are faced with a situation in which we have a limited amount of dollars allocated. We have a city budget crisis, and we are in a situation where we're combined with a growing, expanded number of elections. Our methodology, that's one challenge. And we have not just the general and the primary, but we have several specials coming up. Our contract our budget is currently for the general and the primary and one special. So that's an issue we have to solve for. Our methodology also relies on citywide data estimates for language communities. The special elections that we are currently talking about, are for council districts, and those require estimates at the council district level. Another challenge is that the methodology, as approved in April, does not offer an explicit formula or process for selecting which special election we're going to serve in, if there's several, and given that there's going to be finite resources. And we know that, of course, for all the special elections, BOE is going to cover interpretation in the voting rights BRA languages in whatever council district there is a special election being held in. The other challenge is the implementation, as Guggen pointed out, some of the scenarios that we want to try to be explicit to solve for going forward. One is the methodology locks us into providing services on the last weekend of early voting, and maybe we want to think about moving those days, right? So we could switch to the first weekend as opposed to last weekend. I believe in this November's election, the last weekend was more utilized than the first, but nonetheless, that's a question that we want to, an area we might want more flexibility in. Guggen already spoke about the health and safety exceptions for selecting poll sites. It's as she pointed out, language assistants are stationed outside the poll room, and in order to gain access to the polling room, we need the permission of the BOE, and we're allowed to be and permitted to be in the polling room when we're accompanying a voter who's requested the assistance for language interpretation. And no person can really enter the poll room except BOE officials and authorized poll watchers and YPD voters and their children under 16 per the election law. So, and also in stationing the assistants for CEC, we need to be mindful, whether it's outside the poll room or anywhere, we need to be mindful of ADA guidelines to make sure that we're clear, leaving enough space for folks to move around. So as Guggen pointed out, a few sites didn't have adequate space for for interpreters to be stationed outside the poll room. There wasn't enough room. There was just like one, maybe it was just one room. And so there was no room for them outside the poll room. So we had to, we ended up having to situate them outside. And as you heard, that was a challenge when it's cold. Of course, it may not be an issue when it's in the middle of the summer in the primary, but that's another thing we're trying to solve for. And then the last piece is that the methodology asks us to cover the last weekend. This includes Saturday, and we had a challenge, as Guggen mentioned, recruiting for some languages, including Yiddish. And we were also told that it was partly because it was Shabbat, and Saturday would be tough for folks to work. So we wanted to think about whether we can build in some flexibility around that, whether if there's a particular need, maybe we want to think about like, Shabbat, do we want to think about potentially offering services on another day to accommodate that? Obviously, that would need to be decided in consultation with the community. But as I said, the methodology requires Saturday and Sunday. So what I like to do right now is go through the changes. And again, you have the doc, the amendments doc, but it's also up on the screen. And what I like to do is actually start from the beginning. Francis, if you could just go to the top of the document. And we will, like, as you know, the underlined sentences are what is being amended. And the brackets show you what is being deleted. So one is just saying that this is an amendment, provided that it's approved today. And then if we go to the second is just definitions, and this is consistent with what we have. There's no changes there. The third is covered elections. So here what we're seeing is the changes here is that we are going to be providing primary and general, but special elections require further attention. So we're taking that and expanding on how we will serve special elections. The underlined sentence points out that we will only be serving specials if the previous general election had at least one election day or early voting polling place designated for the special. And in addition to that, we determine that the resources available to the commission allow for the provision of such services. So it's both things. And what we're doing here is that we're explicitly stating that we can only cover specials when, there's a previous, in the general, there was a poll site covered in that geography. So that is sort of implied right now in the methodology, since it is a citywide estimate, but here we are making that explicit. That's what number 3 does. And combines it with, in the case of like 6 specials, we need to figure out how much money we have and what we can cover.
Do you want questions? Do you want questions as we go along, or do you want to hold them to the end?
Maybe if it's like a quick question, we can do it now, but if it's more deliberative, let's hold to the end, if that's okay.
Then I'm not sure which it is, so let's hold it to the end.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So the number 6 is again makes explicit the total number of polling places served for each general and primary based on. I mean, it's it's just it's adding those 2 elections in. Number 8 is spelling out that this is targeting the commission's formula that was included in the methodology resolution before. It's making explicit that methodology is specifically for general and primary elections. And it is also for the early voting period for the general and primary elections. Before that was not explicit. It was just like targeting formula. And part of why this is a challenge, again, as I said, is that some of the specials that we're encountering in the immediate future are at the council district level. Number 9, keep scrolling down, and you might look at this on your own screen. I don't know if you can see the screen here. But targeting formula for special elections is new. And what this is saying, again, it's making explicit, is that prior to every covered special election and associated early voting period, what we'll do is we will look at the election day and early voting polling places that are designated for that special, and we will compare it to the election day and early voting sites that the commission served. And if there's an example of a poll site that appears on both lists, in other words, BOE is providing services for a special in that poll site and CEC covered it in the general, So we will consider those poll sites for services. And the last piece of it is that the early voting, if it's an early voting polling place, we will only serve it if the special election has a covered early voting period, which is defined in paragraph 11. So here we're saying that we're going to cover early voting for some specials and not every single special. Number 10 is the health and safety exception, and it says the chair, this is also new, chair may exempt any polling place from the program for a particular election if the chair determines that such polling place has no indoor space for interpreters and that stationing interpreters outside would be detrimental to their health and safety. And the last piece is the covered early voting period. Here we are removing the clause on the last 2 weekend days to give us flexibility for which days of early voting we'll cover. We're also continuing here to talk about early voting for specials. We are saying that we are going to cover early voting for citywide elective offices or a statewide elective office or for a presidential, for primary and general, and also a statewide federal office. And it also allows us to provide special election for citywide and statewide offices, early voting based upon determination of resources. And that the chair will establish days and hours of early voting services based on the resources available to the commission for the provision of such services or the needs of the language community to be served in consultation with the Language Assistance Advisory Committee. So then that part refers to an example like the Yiddish that we just talked about, and the Yiddish speaking community. And then the total number of early voting places served will depend on the total resources allocated to the program. Early voting polling places for the general and primary elections will be targeted pursuant to paragraph 8 of these procedures. Early voting polling places for special elections will be targeted pursuant to paragraph 9 of these procedures. So this is essentially saying that the council elections early voting is not covered under this provision, and council specials for election day will be covered when we meet those two conditions that we discussed earlier, that we served that poll site in the general and that we have the resources to cover it. So now that I'm opening to the floor for questions and discussion.
So if I could jump in. What stood out to me was in effect, blanket statement that we're not going to cover special elections where the general didn't also involve some coverage. First of all, I've got that more or less right, don't I?
Got it.
Okay.
I mean, it's sort of implied in the methodology as we have it, but we're just saying it.
Well,
Yeah.
but saying it. So, and let me distinguish two scenarios that are put together here that I think should be discussed separately, at least in my view. One of which is scarcity of resources, and you can only cover so much. And that I completely understand, agree with, and would defer to the chair's discretion on that. You got to balance a budget, and you can only do so much. I think we just had a good discussion about that when we talked about the choices of languages too, once upon a time. That, ideally we've got a dozen, but it could easily be 24. So some practical reality has to play. So I have no issue with adjusting the methodology and formula to be dependent upon the deferral to the chair's discretion on budgetary matters. I guess what stood out to me in paragraph 9, and maybe it applies to 11 as well. In paragraph 9, essentially it says that we don't cover a special if we didn't cover the general, and that doesn't allow for the possibility that in the general we may have learned there was a need that we weren't filling, that we would then be and that assuming funds are available, that we would want to fill that need. But this would, in effect, prohibit us from doing so. I wouldn't necessarily say that we'd be required to do it, A, because of budget, and B, perhaps other logistical reasons. But I would be loath to prohibit us from doing that other than for budgetary reasons. And then looking at paragraph 11, I'll just give you all of my notes. You talk about statewide offices for elective office, whether statewide federal or statewide state. Essentially, that's a very few offices. That's governor, lieutenant governor, comptroller, and then the United States senators. That's it. It wouldn't be city council members. It wouldn't be assembly or state senate. Say again?
And the Attorney General's office.
Thank you. You're absolutely right, Attorney General. But it's just those handful, right? There's 3 citywide offices that are truly citywide. There are maybe 3 or 4 statewide offices that are truly citywide, and then the federal, there's 2. And I guess president every 4 years. That's it. So again, if it's a budgetary thing, I get it, but why not just say that? And if it's not a budgetary thing, I'm curious as to why we're eliminating state senators, state assembly members, city council members, and so forth. Those are my notes. Thanks.
Good, very good questions. I mean, I think the major challenge we have here, in addition to resources, is how we determine which languages to target when it's not a citywide election, because the estimates we have for languages spoken and how we even choose which languages we are covering are based on citywide estimates, right? We're looking at, for example, how many people speak Russian across the entire city. And that means that is what determines that Russian is a language that is served, as well as it determines the proportion of services that go to Russian. Those are citywide estimates. So applying those estimates in the example of an election that covers president or citywide elective offices makes sense, because it's covering the whole city. But for when it's another elective office like council or assembly, it's a little difficult to translate the citywide estimate to that local area. Like, we might not be accurate in, there might be a large community, a large number of people speaking a particular language in that council district, but it's not covered in the citywide estimate, if that makes sense. So that we would get different estimates. And I think that the challenge here is that we need to find the estimates for each geography. So if it's assembly, for example, or if it's a state assembly or state senate, we need to know what the rank ordering is of languages in that area. Similarly for council district, in order to sort of have a neutral measure of which languages to cover in that geography. So that's the challenge that we're facing right now. And the language data that we have, we had to go through a several step process, and Gagan can also speak to this more, in order to figure out how the language data actually maps on to election districts, because we don't have, the only source of language data we have is the American Community Survey data. And that's broken out by census tract, and you can map it onto election districts, but the work of doing other geographies would need to be done every time we have to figure out the specials. Does that help answer your question? Not sure.
It does. It suggests that special elections happen frequently and pervasively, and that's not my experience.
That's true. It's very true.
I was also like to comment, we didn't provide these languages in every single polling site. You've chosen specifically, because of the region where the languages are predominant. Wouldn't it be the same, if you provided Yiddish at this polling site, and this happens to be the special election in that district, and that's the polling site, wouldn't it be, you know, a language that would serve that community?
That's correct. So under the current methodology, if we did provide a language in a particular geography, and that overlaps with a council district, special election, we do have the discretion to service that particular poll site for election day in that special district. I mean, sorry, in that special election geography, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that would be paragraph 3, right?
Yes.
Sarah, this is Donna again. I don't, if anyone doesn't have any other questions. My question is regarding the interpreter being on the inside. Is there some way that we can get this as a mandate? I know we have it in our amendment, and I think that is a good thing. But I'm thinking that is there someone that we need to go to so that we can get this as part of the laws for BOE? Because I feel that if we have it there and we decide that, you know, if the space is not accommodating, we can decide not to have it. And there may be some pushback and people not allowing us to be there at all, for this very reason. So I think if in some way we can get this, or speak to someone to get it into where BOE would allow the CEC interpreter to be in the polling site. You know, if I don't know how we will do that, but I'm just thinking, is there some way we need to think about doing that so we don't have this problem with people being outside in inclement weather and, you know, just not having a really good reception to the process?
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate. Someone else have something to add there?
I was going to add, this is Lillian. Have we even asked for those accommodations to take place? We can definitely formally send a letter signed by all of us or by you, and happy to advocate however I can, because for some reason, my assumption was that we were being treated as part of New York City staff. I think we are. I mean, your employees, I'm sure, are. So any subcontracts that come out of this group should be respected and considered as they were member of the New York City staff. So to me, this is really unacceptable. I mean,
This is Amy.
it goes to say also that our voters that are monolingual in other languages other than English get a different treatment. Outside of the polling side, that's a little bit worrisome to me.
Yeah, this is Amy. I just wanted to jump on that. Thank you, Lillian. I was thinking that we're further underserved polling sites, it sounds like to me, and that becomes a concern of mine.
So I have a question,
Mhm.
Sarah, can you answer whether or not we have even tried to make a formal request for these accommodations?
I think that if you'd like to send a letter, I'm open to doing that. I think that, you know, this is a matter of jurisdiction, right? And it's also a matter of elections are the purview of the Board of Elections, and we are trying to think about ways to just build a collaborative partnership with them to serve voters. And I think they've been, you know, they were generally sort of very helpful in terms of helping us find, you know, the locations for where we could be stationed, right? And just had flagged for us those few sites. But it certainly, I mean, it is their call. So I think that, you know, we can definitely talk more about how to make it a formal request, if that's what folks would like to do.
Could I jump in on that?
Entertain that. Sorry, go ahead, Mark.
No, I just want, thank you. I have a clarifying question, which is, I'll call them are our interpreters being treated differently in this regard than ones that are in the general city interpreting provisions? And the second question is this a matter of Board of Elections rulemaking, or is it a statute that limits the access of our folks? And so is it different for us than for other interpreters? And whose rule is it? Those are the two questions, because that goes to Lillian's idea of sending a letter, and would clarify to whom we would send that letter, I think.
If you mean other city interpreters serving other programs, is that what you mean? Or
What I mean is that there are certain languages that the city provides interpreter services for, and then our group adds to those languages. So, Spanish, I believe, citywide is one that the city already provides. Is that interpreter inside and we're outside, or are both of them outside?
They're
Inside.
both, yeah, the the interpreters for VRA languages in the areas where they're being provided, the interpreters are inside the poll room.
Inside, yes. I know that for a fact.
Okay, so then I join in my colleagues' expressions of surprise and trouble with that result.
Yeah, and as to your question about rule versus statute, I'm not 100%. I don't know which it is, but it is
My
an
guess-
interpretation. It is an interpretation of a legal, you know.
Maybe we can ask the Department of Law of the City of New York to clarify whether or not we are prohibited by statute to make a request. I mean, look, the Board of Elections for many, I mean, the behavior of the Board of Elections has been troubling. This is why these type of engagement settings exist. And we as citizens, I cannot tell you the many things that are troubling, but I can tell you that separating the Board of Elections from any other city agencies as if it doesn't belong somewhere in the city of New York, it's wrong. It is also, there is also a possibility for each of our Board of Commissioners to bring this to a vote. Each borough has a commissioner in this board of the city of New York, the Board of Elections. And if I have to ask my commissioner for the Borough of the Bronx to make this a fair game, I'm happy to do that. So let us know.
Yeah, this is Gagan. I just wanted to jump in for 1 second and just add the additional information that this is part of the election law that non-BOE staff be outside of the polling room or be outside of the guardrails unless there is approval or it's again like that power lies with the Board of Elections, but it's very much outlined in the election law that non-BOE staff may not be like within the polling room or the guardrail.
Yes and no, because each campaign is allowed poll watchers and lawyers to come in to observe the process and collect data. So all I'm saying is I would like to entertain a petition formally from this body to, one, ask for explanation, and two, advocate for this behavior to change. You know, the only troubling thing that may go on inside, I know I hear echoing, I don't know why. The only troubling thing that I know happens inside.
Mark, can you mute yourself? That's the echo that we're hearing.
Oh, thank you. The only troubling thing, and I think illegal thing that goes on inside of a poll site, other than the general practice of running the election process, is electioneering, campaigning. And we are going to serve an additional service that's already going on, which is providing interpretation services to those that are voting. We're not there to tell the voters anything other than that. And if we are, then we, tell me. But I think the only thing we're doing is already being done for other languages. So I don't see a conflict or any illegal behavior here.
Okay, thanks for that. The answer to the question that Mark posed earlier about what it's coming from, it's an election law, and I think it's 8-1042, which talks about the guardrail about of who can be inside the poll room. So that's a piece that we're we are working with as far as where our language assistants are stationed. I mean, this is definitely a point that we need to figure out, and I think that's given that is law is why we have this ability. Until we are able to address it and find a solution or not, we do need to have the ability to make a call on where we're gonna possibly not serve a poll site, because we can't have people, there might be other ways to work around that. I do have I have a question for all of you right now, which relates to our overall agenda and what we want to cover today. And it's now 3:00. And I had said to myself that maybe we won't get through this amendment and discussion and vote today, and maybe that's okay. We can calendar a meeting for early January to continue this conversation, and then keep going with other parts of the agenda, or we can just focus on this for now. So I wanted to see if people had a strong opinion on continuing the conversation.
I really don't want to let this go. I think this goes to show our ability as a group to make an impact on policies or laws that are impeding access to our communities. And we're here for civic engagement, access to those that are voiceless, that have been giving barriers. And I think that if it impedes a decent and respectful delivery of the services we're trying to add to these communities, we should not move forward with anything other than making sure these people are being respected. And just the image of one of our interpreters interpreting on the sidewalk.
To clarify, sorry, it's not the interpretation is happening inside the poll room. It's just where are they stationed as people, are waiting, essentially. If they need the interpretation, under the statute, they walk into the poll room with the person they're serving, they provide the interpretation, and they leave.
Well, but they have to basically engage the person first outside, the voters?
That would be correct. Yes.
That is what I'm troubled about.
Yeah.
So this interpreter has to be in freezing weather conditions. Let's say we have a special election in January or February. Let's say we do have the access to provide these very specific languages to these very specific communities, which happen very often, by the way. A lot of these specials happen in communities where there are huge concentration of immigrant communities that speak a language. And there's no possible way to get it done. I've campaigned in the middle of snowstorms under 0-degree weathers in Long Island. So anyway, I'm just saying this because we have to be honest to ourselves. Here we are pushing something that seems second class. Sorry, I get very emotional about it.
I think that everyone is the concerns being voiced. We certainly share, right? The team certainly shares that, and I think anyone who cares about the health and safety of anyone would care. So I certainly hear, and we all share, and that is exactly why we are trying to make this allowance for ourselves. It's not the best solution, right? But under the circumstances, when it is law, and it is about a law that exists, that is on the books, that would probably, we'd have to figure out how we would, what to do about that. But given that, we're saying that in the very few cases, and it was also very few cases where we had to be outside, we ought to allow ourselves to think ahead and say that place, that poll site might not be the best for us to situate our assistants, and that we can then
But I disagree.
replace that.
I don't think we should make decisions about where we provide services based on physical accommodations that
Okay,
the
that's fair.
DOE, that community shouldn't have to suffer because of some stupid archaic law that was put in place before these communities became what they are. This is why this body's here for, and if not, let me know, because then I feel like I'm not serving my community well.
Yeah,
So-
if I could just jump in real quick. I've
course.
been trying to ask a question for a second. I agree with Lilium, but I don't think that we need to limit our services based on where the DOE decides to let our folks go into. There was like a lawsuit and then an agreement that happened between BOE and the city, and we should go back to that, because when Moya first launched this program, they did not want translators inside that they were not providing, and then they came to some form of resolution, and that resolution should include our translators. On the second piece of what I wanted to say is, I understand that we're in really tight budget times right now. But I don't think that our democracy should be impacted by austerity measures. I don't agree with these edits or amendments, and I think that we have a really long way to go. There's some that make sense, but I don't think that us limiting language access and language accessibility in elections is going to do justice for our democracy. So I understand, again, that there are budget limitations, but the city finds money for everything and anything when it wants to. This is really critically important. And if we are not doing our job as stewards of expanding the democracy in our city, then I don't know what we're doing here. That, and then the last piece I'll say here is we should definitely not use any previous election as a standard bearer in like how you determine how you provide services down the road, because that's just not a tangible way of assessing where need is and where it isn't. So for instance, if there's a candidate running in an immigrant heavy district where there's been an incumbent who's not an immigrant, and then you have an immigrant candidate who does come out to vote, come out to run, where is the language access there? So I think that there is going to be a number of different hurdles here. I would like to have further conversations. We may not be able to have all of our conversations today, but I think that we need to have a specific meeting on this alone.
I agree 100%. This is not an easy issue to resolve in this meeting, but I think it's one that can, and I'm happy to begin to draft some, like an advocacy plan if needed, that will include some steps to begin engaging about how do we resolve this barrier. And I agree 100% with you, Maura. I don't think we pick elections based on data, because as you mentioned, in Washington Heights, this happened, and the only reason why we were able to elect the first Dominican American there in the 90s was because the community itself got out in the streets and translated and walked their mothers inside. The city did not provide it, but we've come a long way, and we're talking about other communities now, and I will hate to be part of this group that impedes other incoming immigrant communities and not allow them the democratic process to get their own people get elected. That's not what we're here for. We're here to provide extend access, not pick and choose.
Okay, I totally appreciate everyone's comments and heartfelt feelings on this. So what I'm gathering from this is that folks do not want to approve this amendment as it stands and may not even want an amendment at all. Is there anyone who it feels otherwise? And if we want to just hold this conversation, that's perfectly okay with me. We can pick it up again in January. But I just want to give the floor to anyone who wants to offer an alternative perspective on this. Okay, hearing no one wanting to vote on this, we will just hold this amendment for now and see where we can pick up on it again in January.
I'd like to ask a question. So is there any way we can begin from now to January, given all of the concerns you've heard, at least some of the members, maybe you want to take a vote on next steps or a motion on moving forward to put a letter together, even if it's a letter to explore what we can and cannot do. But I don't want to wait for another discussion that happens in January. There are going to be things happening, elections and budget issues and you name it. I just don't want to wait.
If you'd like to work on that, if everyone wants to write such a letter, does everyone here want to work on such a letter? Let me ask it another way. Is there anyone here who does not want to work on this letter?
Not that I don't want us to work on this letter, but it kind of just feels disrespectful that as a dual, like this commission didn't come out of thin air, right? Like voters voted for this commission. So there needs to be a level of respect that is received to this commission, the commissioners, and the people who are staffing this commission, that like goes above and beyond. Like we don't, like if the city already has an agreement with the Board of Elections on the Moya translators, what makes it different for us?
It's not different. It's actually exactly the same. Under the Moya program, the language, the interpreters were stationed outside the poll room. It's the same for us. It's only in a small number of cases where there is no room outside of the polling site, but inside the polling place that we have to be outside. Our services are stationed in exactly the same way that Moya's were. What I want to also point out is that the issue of health and safety and like the language assistants being stationed outside is one piece of the amendment, right? Like there are other questions in here that that I think Murad, you spoke to, like not making decisions about specials based on, what happened in the prior election of a general election, which, again, we can get into more detail about that. But I do want to remind everyone that why we're having this conversation relates not just to resources, which is a real constraint, but also the way in which we develop this targeting formula, the nature of the data, how it's currently collected and also analyzed. We do not have, for the special elections that are coming up for a council level, we do not have estimates at the council level for which languages are predominant in that election district. Or in the council district. I'm sorry.
You mean to tell me that the city of New York doesn't know where these concentrated populations reside? It knows it.
Yeah, no, it knows.
Who goes out to vote. Not just looking at who goes to vote, but looking at where these individuals live. Because I remember a point that some of us raised during the conversation about which data we were using, and we were using only the data of those that are eligible to vote. But we can see the growth of how many of those individuals daily become U.S. citizens, so they're excluded from our plans. And what I have seen is these communities can grow massively from one year to the next, from one election cycle to the next. So is this something that we're flexible with, or we have to follow the data to be able to provide the services?
For this cycle and this fiscal year, we approved the methodology that uses the census data, and it's collected at the census tract level. It can be analyzed and mapped onto council districts, but that's not an analysis that we did when we were writing up this methodology, right? Like, we were thinking about citywide estimates. So we
tried to include what Lillian is saying,
Yes.
but
I
the city
remember.
pushed back on that.
what we tried to include, which piece of it? Can you just repeat?
People aging into voting age, as well as the estimate of people. Sorry, I'm eating. The people who then become U.S. citizens.
Documented residents that will potentially become citizens in those communities, because historically we have seen this population grow from an influx of new immigrants to become new immigrant voters very rapidly. So what I'm saying is, if you know that there is a Haitian community in Queens Village and it's growing, don't just base it on those that are voting today. Base it on the fact that there is a community that needs this translation services. Because if not, we're cheating almost, I don't want to say 10 years, but we're cheating at about 5 years of services.
That's a different question, and Guggen may add more to this. It's a different question than the geographic nature of the estimate. Guggen, did you want to add something?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that, we very much hear the points that you're raising around what the census, the ACS data captures. And we, of course, don't want to use data that's 5 years behind. Intentionally, in our methodology, we include language that mandates a CEC to update the data annually. So as soon as the 5-year ACS estimates are released, we must then rerun the analysis to incorporate that new data. And the way, as the ACS 5-year data works is that for the preliminary methodology, we use the 2013 to 2018 data. So as soon as the 2019 data is released and aggregated with the previous 4-year data, we will update the analysis to reflect the changes captured within the census. So we very much.
I get it, but to go back to my original question, do we have to rely on this data to be able to provide the services, or we are just following what the city wants us to do, which is what they do? They only use the census data. I guess my point is, can we try to get as many people as possible and not get caught up in the data discussion, and just, we know where these people is and where the communities are based on many other different data? Do we have to?
Well, we need to. Sorry, Lillian. Sorry I spoke over you. What we have to do per the charter is come up with a neutral methodology that relies on, and the census data is mentioned in the charter as a source of data. So the answer to your question is yes, the charter does require us to rely on that data. The methodology allows us to add additional data sources if we want to, but it has to be a neutral process. Amy, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about being outside of the poll site, and it is really troubling. But at the same time, I'm thinking of creative ways that we could use that to our advantage. And I know that budget is an issue, but I'm thinking immediately about a vehicle of some sort, or an outdoor room that has heating and electricity and AC for the winter, that advertises that we are the Civic Engagement Commission. We provide translation. It's also a place, Lillian, where community members could go into, because it's not the polling site, so they could go in there, discuss in their language, what it is to vote or what information they need. So I see it as a real opportunity in some ways to be outside of the polling site. And I'm trying to take a negative in a way that maybe we could actually use this to our advantage. So I just wanted to put that out there.
And this is Guggen. I just wanted to add one piece. For election day, out of the 52 sites, there were 2 where we were not sure if we could place interpreters inside. We had coordinators, and for any site where we had folks outside, we had CEC staff there to make sure the interpreters were okay, to run coffee, to grab blankets, make sure to really take care of that relationship. But in terms of election day, we had 2 sites that were set to be outside, but we were then able to work with the site on the day of to move folks inside. So this language that we're proposing, and of course open to changing it, is a fail-safe rather than it's when we're looking at the best case, worst case scenario, this is the worst case scenario. Whereas our goal is to work to make sure interpreters are inside. And this is again this will not be an issue for the June primary, but it really was the language came more so from that fail-safe space rather than a rule that the CEC will adhere to, in the sense that every site will be outside. That's not going to be the case. It's going to be, our goal is to have none outside.
I just think of when we all leave and move to our next chapters or next duties. I don't want to leave this group without doing the best that I can to put something in writing in our resolution or books that states that we are treating these communities with respect and working hard to make sure they're being treated equally. And that's what I see when I see myself as a leader in my community, trying to be fair, respect all languages, respect all ethnicities. And I personally do not feel comfortable that if that are not all voters are being treated the same. I mean, this year Board of Elections budget was huge. They spent a lot of money to make sure the voters were engaged. I'm safe. They each got a pen. They each got free handouts. I mean, for Christ's sake, we're not trying to defund the city of New York with what we're proposing here. We're proposing dignity. We're proposing fairness. And I'm happy to speak to whoever I have to speak to in the city government to make sure that they hear us loud and clear. And I hear I work for a health system. We provide mobile services. And it's great that you're trying to propose that, Amy, but that is huge cost too. It's gas, it's insurance, it's heat. I mean, I'll be honest with you, it's easier for us to build a clinic than to maintain mobile services. It's complicated work, but I just wanted to, somewhere where this is all going to end, I wanted to be loud and clear that me and those that have expressed concerns about this have tried to make it fair and have tried to give everybody equal access. And I personally, as a bilingual immigrant person, would not want to be pulled on the side of the road to be asked whether or not I need an additional service that should be given to me by my rights. And in the middle of a snowstorm or the rain or anything else, or attacked by those campaign workers. I've been a campaign workers many times. It's just not. It doesn't feel respectful. I just want to continue.
Absolutely.
Sorry, I'm gonna, because we're approaching also the public comment period. So I want to be mindful of that as well, and figure out how we're gonna use the rest of our time. I think we have agreed that we do not want to vote on this amendment today. We will come back in the January, and it was also someone said we should just focus a meeting just on this. We can do that if folks want to do that. I do want to make a note that, just so that we're all really clear on the consequences of not voting on this today, is that there is a special election on December 22nd in the Bronx. We did not serve any poll sites in that district during the general. Okay, so we don't have a way to figure out which languages to serve in that district right now. Per our methodology, it doesn't give us any guidance about how to decide that. So I just want everyone to know that, we don't know how to do that election or that council district. And
about
we will not be able to serve that council district. So, Mark.
If I understood paragraph 3 correctly, if we didn't serve the proposed amendment, I'm sorry. So the consequence of not adopting the amendment is that we don't get the current disclaimer. But if I understand correctly, we wouldn't serve that special election anyway, because if we didn't, according to what I understood you just now to say, that since which is that we didn't serve anybody in the general, therefore under paragraph 3, we wouldn't serve the special, then the result is the same, is it not?
It is, and yes, it is. But the problem is that in the resolution that we voted on into effect in April, we do not say that that's what we're going to do. We do not say in that resolution that the provision of services for specials will be decided based on what we did in the general. We just say we're going to cover special. So that's what we're trying to solve for.
So let me ask the next question then, which is, in the absence of the proposed amendment, what would you do?
We would apply the implied interpretation, which is that we don't have, we didn't serve that poll site, or we didn't serve any poll site in that council district in the general. So we are not going to serve it in the special. But there is nothing explicit in the methodology that tells us to do that. So that's the challenge, is like we are offering a solution that we haven't publicly stated until this meeting, because it's not in the methodology. Am I making sense?
Yeah, I just a question of clarity. Are we speaking about former council member King's district in Co-op City and
That's
on
correct. That's correct. Mark, did I make sense on what I said about?
I think I understand. Essentially, that there's an ambiguity.
Yes.
That we are not that absent this amendment, which I found controversial.
Yes.
would not be clarified. My vote would be to clarify it in a different way. So we're left where we were. And I don't know what, so it sounds like there would be no practical difference. It's just that the answer would be based more on perhaps the chair's discretion than a clear edict from a rule.
That's correct.
Okay. Since I'm an advocate for the opposite position, I'm happier with it being a chair's discretion than I would be with a rule that I don't support. So.
Okay. So, I mean, to that point, I guess to clarify and build on what I was saying before, then it would be the chair's discretion, and that we would not serve in that election because, according to the methodology as it's written, we didn't serve any poll site in that council district. So I guess part of my saying this out loud is just to make it explicit that that's what is going to happen for the December 22 special.
Murad just wrote in the chat that the elections are going on, early voting is going on already, and this is next week. So even if we made the recommendation to move forward with providing the services, it's too late. So we're being faced with that challenge as well.
I just wanted to add one note, and this goes back to the conversation on resources. The goal of the program is to continue to expand the number of poll sites that we serve in the general election and the primary. We were, due to limited resources, we served 52 sites on election day. The goal is to continue to expand that, to get that to 100 sites, 150 sites, and keep growing the program. And as we keep growing the program, as our citywide denominator increases, the likelihood of serving more specials increases. And the other point is just like the nature of concentration of languages that are served within the program. Russian is very concentrated in South Brooklyn. So when we're looking at on District 12 in the Bronx, and we're looking at the how many Russian speakers there are, you come across 45 speakers in a geographic area that's larger than what we look at when doing the analysis at a citywide level. So there are very few speakers. I think the other piece is just the resources piece does play into the amount of services we provide for the special. And as we increase that denominator, there's more likelihood that we will just, based on this rule, be providing services in specials that had a poll site prior. But just looking at even the percentage allocation that's within our rule, I think that Russian gets 38.8% of the total services, and that piece that we have in the rule doesn't apply on a council district level. So I just wanted to add that piece, but really appreciate all of the flags you're raising, William. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, if I may, I'm speaking from a more political point of view. If we are trying to really protect our democracy and provide additional access to these new citizens, the impact that these communities will have at a citywide election is way less than it could have at a city council. I'm talking politics now. If you are a community that has 40,000 strong new voters that just became naturalized, will probably determine the candidate of a city council election, but it will not impact a statewide election at the same level or a citywide election. So I'm trying to figure out if we are really doing this in the most democratic and fair way, or we're just doing this because of our lack of, data collection that has nothing to do with our control, but that exists probably intentionally in many cases, not to really count these communities properly. So I just wanted to put it out there. When we are determining how to serve and when to serve these communities with the interpretation services, and the real impact that our services will have on what they're trying to achieve, which is really, at the end of the day, political power.
Okay, thank you so much, Lillian, and thank you everyone for really, I truly appreciate both the spirit and the letter of what you've said today about this amendment. And I think I would be very grateful if you continued to sit with it and think through what is it that we can do. I think I've laid out to you some of the challenges that we have that we need to solve for in terms of how the methodology is laid out. And then we can schedule a time very early in December. We will send out a poll to continue the conversation on this piece. We had a bunch of other things on the agenda that we have not gotten to. So what would like to first ask Francis, is there anyone who has signed up for public comment?
Not at this time. However, I think we'll open the floor for participants who would like to offer public comment at this time. So I will unmute everyone that is not a commissioner. Okay, so if anyone would like to offer public comments, you are welcome to.
And if there is, we can wait for like 1 or 2 more minutes. And if there isn't, I would like to see if we can just try to possibly do some of the other things that were on the agenda, and if that's okay with everyone.
I think that's fine.
Okay. Since there isn't anyone, any member of the public who is currently speaking or has not indicated through a chat or a text that they would like to speak, if we could just move to the next item on the agenda, which was a presentation sharing with you all where we are on the participatory budgeting platform, or the DeciDem participatory democracy platform that we are launching a youth demonstration project through. And so I'd like to invite folks who are working on this program to take us through this, and let's try to keep this, I think, relatively shorter so we can get through some of the rest of the stuff. So I think that would be Wendy, Daniela, and Francesco.
Yeah, I'll start us off. Thank you, Sarah. I'm Wendy Trawl, Senior Advisor for the Civic Engagement Commission. And I know Sarah and the CEC's been keeping you all, I think, updated on the project. You've received a communication from us on the status of our launch. And then was excited and happy to see some of the members of some of our commissioners attend our live demo of the platform on December 1st. For those of you who are not able to attend that demo, we will share a recording with you all, and that will provide a kind of a deeper dive in form that we chose and some examples of how it's used in other cities. But for those of you who weren't able to join and having you all together, we just wanted to provide you with a quick recap of the project and the platform, a quick overview of the process that we've developed on our site and how the site is hosting this process, and introduce some of the potential for how we anticipate the site being used to support other initiatives in the city and for the CEC in the future. And then also just briefly show you a space that we're creating for you as a group, which we're going to invite you to, and show you how it could be used to support communications and collaborations for you all as commissioners and again as a group. And then just as follow up, we're also going to ask you all to actually create an account. At least one of you have made an account, which is great. It should only take a minute. You just need a username and a password. And if you use your NYC, your actual CC address, and we'll show you how to do this, but if you go through the NYC employee option, you should already have an account, and it should take you straight to our site. And we'll also offer an onboarding session for those of you who want to have an orientation for how to use the group that we've just mentioned. So just a quick recap on the site and just some context and background. We officially launched participate.nyc.gov last month using DeciDem, an open source participatory democracy platform. And so having launched in November, we actually became the first in the US to bring DeciDem. Here, there are about 2 other cities I think who are close behind, so we'll have company soon. But the site itself is supporting all phases of our youth-led participatory process. And just as a reminder, this is our youth-led process that PB process that we're running. It's our money. And we've put up 100K of our own funding to empower youth ages 9 to 24 to vote on projects that address their needs and interests. And just sharing a few goals of the project, in addition to allowing us to engage young people in this environment, we're also building infrastructure and laying the groundwork for other CEC initiatives, including a citywide PB process. We've been deploying and assessing strategies for remote engagement. We've been developing great relationships with city agencies and building up our relationships and networks with community-based organizations. As of today, we've had 74 community groups and organizations sign up to participate. And our youth who are running our virtual sessions have already run 31 sessions with young people as part of our first phase. And then just a reminder, we're partnering with the Coro Participatory Budgeting Youth Fellowship Program, and they've been providing a lot of capacity on design and implementation, as well as helping us build our own internal capacity on using the tool. Just some real brief context on the vision and purpose of this platform. Other cities have used Decidim as a way of transforming the way government engages residents. And so our vision really is to have agencies and communities be able to look at this as the front door or a front door to resident engagement. It was created by Barcelona in 2016 to engage residents in a municipal planning process. And because they decided to make it open source and free for anyone to use, it's been picked up by, again, lots of cities throughout the world to support participatory democracy, to run and customize and configure a platform to support their participatory budgeting processes, but also to support citizen assemblies gathering input from communities on policy issues. And the great thing about that is that all the features and contributions that cities are making and that they come up with are shared because it's open source and it's free. So as people are making improvements, everyone benefits, and these new releases are shared. And I think the other key advantage, just want to quickly point out, is just the alignment to the mission of our charter, which is all about building trust in communities. If the foundation and even the very coding is really built and operated on principles of democracy, including transparency. Any edits we make to the content that residents put on our platform, it's traceable. And again, because it's open and free, all these continuous improvements that are made is part of a shared governance structure. So if people change some of these things on the platform and make them available, they're all evaluated based on these shared principles of a contract that sort of everybody signs as the social contract to be a part of the community. And then the other advantage is just it's pretty easy to use. It's modular, it's flexible. We have one process on the system on the site right now, but we can support multiple processes. We can build spaces. We'll show you one of those that could be used for the commissioners as a group. For all of these processes and all of these groups, we get to pull in features that are helpful in collaborating and getting input from proposals to surveys, events, votings, meetings. And again, so we'll show you that as well. And we estimate that to create a new space for a group, it takes about 30 minutes. So again, it's easy to use and very flexible in our experience once you get it up and running, which we did. So I want to turn over to my colleague Francesco, our partner from Coro, who is going to give you a very quick overview of the process that the PB Fellows helped us to design. It's our money process and how we've used the site to support it. And then Daniela, our participatory budgeting advisor, is going to quickly show you what a group would look like before we wrap up. So, Francis, if you want to turn over share rights to Francesco.
Thank you so much. Hi, everybody. My name is Francesco Teno. My pronouns are he, him, his. I'm the director of the Coro Youth Fellowship at the Coro New York Leadership Center on participatory budgeting. I'm very excited to be here, really happy to showcase some of the work that the team has been working on. So I'm going to share my screen. And what we'll start on is, let's see, our homepage. We're going to go right to join the conversation. I just want to do a really quick refresher on what this process even is. This participatory budgeting process is a little bit of an evolution from what folks are used to in the city council. Before we even start collecting ideas, we're in this process of young people saying what they need. And so our young people at Coro have designed an hour-long interactive session where they facilitate a conversation with other young people across the city. During this conversation, not only are they learning about participatory budgeting, but they're having a discussion and describing what their needs are in this moment. And then also talking about some potential solutions to their needs. And so that's the phase we're in now. Once we're done with this part of the process, what's going to happen is the young people that I work with will publish a statement of needs, and then we'll publish that on this platform for community-based organizations to respond to. It's almost as if young people themselves are writing the RFP here. And so we'll have youth organizations in the next phase submit proposals on how they would spend $20,000 to address the needs that young people highlighted for themselves. That's going to be open for about a month. Proposals will be directly posted in a very transparent way. Young people will be able to provide feedback, comment on things, like things, dislike things in real time. And youth organizations will be able to amend their proposals based on feedback from young people. Once the proposals are finalized, We are going to publish them again onto this platform, and young people will cast a deciding vote to decide what proposals get funded and which CBOs get funding to make their project a reality. Young people have designed this process, and one of the things they did was lower the voting age from 18 to 9 years old. So we'll have 9, 10, and 11-year-olds making binding decisions on how city dollars are spent. And because we want to make sure this is a youth-exclusive process, young people also thought it was really important to have an age cap in this voting process so that no one over the age of 24 will be able to cast a vote. Once the votes are tallied up, the 5 projects with the most votes will each get $20,000. And the CBOs who receive that funding will invite other young people to help them implement the proposals that they describe. And so that's this PB process in a nutshell. And what I'm showing you right now is the process page on our platform on participate.nyc.gov, where everything is posted so that anyone can see what happens when. Go now to the main process page to show you a little bit about what this platform can do. And I think we only have time to scratch the surface really quickly. But on the process page, you'll find a quick summary of the process. On the right side, you have some very consistent design language that is on most process pages on this platform and any groups that get formed. You get a really quick summary of what is decided, who participates, how it's decided, and the timeline of it. If you scroll down, this also allows you to attach files and documents. For example, we have a facilitation guide so that anyone can really take this and do the hour-long session that our young people designed, and it plugs right back into our platform so that whether you're doing it with the young people that I work with, or you're a youth organizer and you want to just get some friends together and run through this, everything will be cataloged onto the platform. I'm going to go to our ideas section. So if you click on ideas from youth on the platform, it takes you to the ideas that are getting submitted by young people. You'll see they all have their own little card. If you click into any one of them, it pulls up more information about that idea. This one is express yourself, a mental health and arts intersection. So it looks like a really cool and creative space for healing. We're hearing a lot of things from young people about mental health. So it's no surprise that some of the ideas coming in address that need. And then if I go right into guidelines, some other things you can attach here are the rules of the process. So if people want to see the nitty-gritty rules of what the process phases will be like, and also what neighborhoods are our priority in terms of outreach and impact, then they can go into our guidelines page as well. And so that's everything here on the process page. I'm going to hand it off to Daniela to showcase a little bit about, separate from processes, how this platform can also be used to support groups such as the Civic Engagement Commission.
Hi, everyone. My name is Daniela. I am an advisor for the Civic Engagement Commission. Thank you so much for the time. As Wendy mentioned earlier, this platform is not only going to be used to host our participatory process, but also we're looking into using it for some of our internal processes, and that includes internal work collaboration between CEC staff, as well as with our advisory committees, and hopefully for the group of commissioners. So right now, what you're looking at is called on the platform is called an assembly, which means it only means that it's a group that can do collaborative work on this platform. So I modeled what it would look like for the Participatory Budgeting Advisory Committee. They're currently not on the platform yet, but we're looking, as Wendy mentioned, to host some onboarding sessions and some other trainings for staff as well. So if you could see, this is the main page for the group. It describes what this group is, who participates in this group: 25 volunteer advisory committee members. What is it that this group is dedicated? Advising on the PB program design, the date it was created, and how long the group is active on the website. I actually I divided it in different tabs because my internet is not running all that smoothly. So I wanted to show you the different features that I could do here on this platform. I could post the monthly meetings for the advisory committee, could put up all the information, the Zoom link. I could post the agenda for the meeting. I could post minutes for the meeting. I can upload documents and other external links to the meeting agenda, and it allows me to create as many meetings as I want. I can also post some notices. So here you could see that I am letting the group, the assembly, know that this meeting will be recorded and the video will be circulated to members that cannot attend the meeting. This is a page of this is another group that we're drafting for the commissioners. You could see everybody has every member of an assembly or a group has their own profile. Where once you log in and you create your account, you can edit all the information that is on this platform. One thing that you should know is that these groups are private, so it's not like anybody can see the information that is posted in these these collaborative groups. There is an option to make them public, but for now, this is all in our drafts, and this is private for the moment. So another feature that I could put on is the good thing about this tool being being able to, we can customize it, is that, for example, this module is called accountability, and it's used to really track the progress of projects or proposals that have been passed using this tool. But I was thinking of ways of how I could use it for my advisory committee. And I modeled it to give updates and show the progress of certain, tasks that we have to complete internally. The next setting that I wanted to show you all is the module is called blog. And here we can set up, debates or topics for discussion. Once people create accounts, people can post and comment on these blog posts. The next one is the debate feature, where I could post topics for closed debates and invite specific members to comment and brainstorm in these groups. And I can also set a time for when this discussion is open and when it closes. And the next feature that it has a survey feature for when I need to collect, different information from different advisory committee members. And you can modify this and customize it as you want and put all the information, all the different information that is needed. And yes, I believe that is what I wanted to show for this group.
Do the three of you have any other additions before we just quickly open to any clarifying questions on this?
Yeah, I just want to say one thing of just right now, this is totally branded for the 1PB process that is happening through the Civic Engagement Commission. As this fills out, as we onboard folks and get folks used to this, the strength is going to be in having a reliable and consistent space for civic engagement to take place in New York City. Daniela mentioned that these places are private right now, but the idea is to make them public and make them transparent and open up what interaction could look like. And so as much as this is a tool for the Civic Engagement Commission and city employees, this is also a really, really powerful tool for residents of New York City who really are looking to make a meaningful impact in the city government, to collaborate with city government and collaborate with community. So that's really the strength here.
I really want to thank you all for that presentation. Does anyone want to ask any clarifying questions on anything that was presented? I really encourage you all, if you haven't already, to visit that platform. And the link was posted in the chat. We also sent you the announcement about it.
Hi, it's Mark. Having been a veteran of a lot of Zoom meetings since since COVID hit, and experiencing both the beauty and the troubling aspects of community input for example, in the chat, which isn't always as responsible as it is in our chat here today. I'm wondering who moderates and how do we deal with folks who visit our sites, let's say not in the spirit of collaboration and cooperation that seems to be the premise of the platform as you have described it.
Yeah, moderation happens a few different ways. There are some built-in mechanisms to prevent folks from typing in all caps or not contributing meaningfully to the discussion. But I think the other important piece is any type of user-generated content, any comment, any proposal can be reported by anybody who's using the site. So there's little flags. They can report hate speech, they can report racism, and then the administrators of the site get an email, get a very quick notification in order to do some moderation on the site. The moderation is done transparently. There's a moderation log on the back end so that no one can just outright start censoring folks for no reason. So that's well documented as well. And then I'll say this isn't right. There's a lot of room here, but the folks who have used this in Europe, the important thing or the interesting thing is that they've put whole countries do assemblies on here, and they were surprised by how little they actually had to moderate, even when thousands of folks were using it. I'm not saying that's going to hold true here, but.
Well, I just want to thank you all for your work. I tried to get on the December 1st walkthrough, and I was having a little bit of a problem, but I did noodle through the website and the graphics and the way you've laid things out. I really think that the work is really great, and I know that we'll have to hone in on some things and elaborate and make things better. But I just want to say really great work and really much appreciated.
Thanks so much, Amy. And I also want to give a shout out to Yasmani, our artist in residence, who we can thank for making it look so professional and beautiful. But yeah, this is a really great learning opportunity for us, and we're excited to see how this is going to evolve. And we have gotten interest from city agencies and from other city council districts who are excited by this idea that this is a community and want to figure out how to join. So I think there's a lot of potential for ongoing collaboration on this space.
Yes, Yasmani is responsible for making it look so beautiful. So yes, I want to reiterate what Wendy said and thank Yasmani for all his work. I also quickly want to show how to create an account for those who are interested, and we encourage you to do so. So if you go to the home page, so participate.nyc.gov, you click on sign in. It should take you to where to log in. So if you click on nyc.id, it will take you to the different options. So since the commissioners have a gov.nyc.gov email, you can just click on NYC employees, and it takes you to the box where you can put your email and the password that you use to sign into with your email, and it creates your account. You don't have to do anything else.
I did not get to this, but I will reach out to folks. Some of you no longer have your government account because it was deprovisioned due to lack of inactivity. Or lack of activity, sorry. So if you are accessing your government account, please make sure you use it at least once a month to show that it's active. Otherwise, the system is set to default stop the account. So I'll be in touch with some of you about that because, as I said, some of them have been deprovisioned. So if we want to reactivate them, we need to start a help desk ticket. And in the last minute that's left, I just really want to, again, thank you all for the very rich conversation we had today around the methodology. And I think it connects to things that we didn't get to on the agenda, but it was really a conversation about what are our values as a commission, right? And what are the commitments that we want to demonstrate with how we operationalize our programs. And that is something that the team has also been engaging in. It's the conversation about what are our shared values. So we wanted to talk about that today as well, but have run out of time. So we'll find a way to bring that back, on our shared discussion. And the other pieces that we didn't get to, updates on the community boards and also updates on our public artists in residence program. I think we can send you a couple of updates by email for those. But then the values conversation is a deeper conversation. So we will bring that back as well. Can I hear, the next meeting we'll send you a poll for early January so we can continue this discussion. So at this point, since it's 4:00, I'd like to see if, do I hear a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, the motion to adjourn has been seconded, and is there any discussion? And if not, all in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, this motion is passed, and I call this meeting to adjourn. Thank you so much, and I wish you all and your families the happiest of holidays, and I look forward to seeing you all very soon in the new year. Thank you so much again, everyone. Take good care.
Happy holidays.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.